go to a networking event and hang out, and it's great, right? Because you're building and developing relationships. And that is huge in any industry. But I also think with an entrepreneurial approach to that same thing, it's, hey, I am strategically building relationships, and how can I continue to serve those relationships? How can I continue to support the people that I've just met? And I feel like when you lead with value and you lead with, hey, how can I help you? For me, at least, it pays back in dividends, because it's helped me grow my business. But at the same time, I love what I do. It feels good to do what we do. So that's really rewarding, shall we say.
Welcome to the Hassle-Free RE Podcast, a real estate podcast where we bring you stories, education, and tips for investors and real estate enthusiasts. If you're interested in investing in real estate or just want to keep a pulse on what's happening in the market, then this podcast is for you. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in. If you enjoy our show, please make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star review. We'd greatly appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hassle-Free RE Podcast. I am your host, Dave Menapace, and I'm here with my co-host, who will introduce herself, as well as our special guest today.
Hey, Kim Menapace here. I'm incredibly excited to introduce our guest today, Stacey St. John. I first heard Stacey on the STR Secrets podcast and was blown away by her energy and tenacity. I felt a connection to her with her corporate background and building her real estate business on the side, often in the hours of 4 a.m. to 7 a.m., which are my favorite productivity times. Without further ado, I want to introduce Stacey to you. In the past 2 to 3 years, she grew a 7-figure investment portfolio of properties she owns and co-hosts for in Myrtle Beach, which allowed her to leave her W-2 job last June. She's the founder of the Female Short-Term Rental Investors Facebook group, the STR Sisterhood podcast, and offers an accelerator trainer program for real estate investors. And most recently ran the STR Virtual Summit for Women, a conference I just attended last week. Stacey, I'll turn it over to you to give another add on to the intro.
Well, I think you did such a fabulous job. So I don't know that there's anything else to add on, but I just want to thank you and Dave for inviting me to spend some time with you and your audience today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's pretty neat. We'll get into hospitable hosts and all the other cool ways that our stories have sort of intertwined, but I think what would be really awesome, Stacey, a lot of our listeners, they are thinking about getting into the short-term rental space, or maybe they're there and they're considering scaling, or they just want a good story, and so what would be really awesome is if you could take us back to maybe before you were working on short-term rentals between 4 and 7 a.m. Paint a picture what life's like, what how things are going, and Let's sort of talk about what got you into the space.
All right. So back from the very beginning, I will share with you a little bit about my start in real estate investing in general, because that is what ultimately led me to go down the path of investing in short-term rentals. When I say we, my husband and I, we're both working W-2s in the corporate world, and we had a son that was graduating from high school and had decided to go to college in Florida. It just so happened that the university he was looking to attend didn't offer campus housing. And so my husband said, well, gosh, instead of investing $1,000 a month, actually not investing, just paying $1,000 a month in renting a place, why don't we buy a place for our oldest to live in? And that way we'll be able to utilize that, down the line in retirement. And, the thought of buying a property in Florida at the time sounded fabulous. So that's exactly what we did. We purchased a condo that was about 15 minutes away from the college he was looking to attend, and closed on that puppy. We were so excited. A couple of weeks after we closed, he said, I just don't think I'm ready to move yet. So I think I'm going to do their online program instead. And so we said a few choice words and very quickly put a plan in place that we were going to need to get a property manager. We didn't really know the first thing about how to analyze an investment. We had kind of bought with what I call consumer brains. We just found a property that we liked, right? Sure. And thought, oh, this is cute. This would be a good investment. And so long story short, we got a property manager, got long-term tenants in there. And then we, after a few months, started thinking, well, gosh, we're actually making money at this. Why don't we do more of this? Right. And so we live in Ohio, and we started purchasing long-term rentals in Ohio. I got my real estate license to help support our investing. We were doing flips as well. And this was over the course of a couple of years. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we were coming off of a flip. We were getting ready to use the proceeds from that flip and invest in another long-term rental at the time. But all these eviction moratoriums started popping up. And we started scratching our head going, this just feels a little off in the fact that we could purchase a property, invite a tenant to come stay with us, and we had no recourse if they weren't paying their bill, right? So we decided, hey, let's dabble. Let's, dip our toe in the water in this short-term rental space, because people have to pay the bill in order to get the keys, right? Pay up front. And so that's how we got into the world of short-term rentals to begin with. And I always say, like, the rest is history. We bought our first property in September of 2020. And I was able to retire from the corporate world in June of 2022. And our life has completely, radically changed. And I couldn't love it anymore. So.
Oh, man, I love that. All right. So now we're going to spend the next hour unpacking all of that for everybody. Let me just ask a couple really quick questions. So where in Ohio were you investing or living, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. So I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we purchased our first investment properties about 10 and a half hours away from us in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And that is where the vast majority of our portfolio is today. Yep. We recently just launched a property in an area called Hocking Hills, Ohio, which is a local vacation destination right here. And we are in the midst of expanding our portfolio there as well.
I hadn't heard all those pieces of that story, so thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask, what do you like about short-term rentals, aside from the economics of it? People have to pay. They even pay Airbnb and Vrbo months before they actually come stay at your property. So it's really upfront and guaranteed income. But what else do you like about the short-term rental asset class? Because you've dabbled in all of the different real estate investing opportunities.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different things. Obviously, the financial rewards. You typically have much stronger cash flow and cash on cash return. But for me, I think the things that I have fallen in love with are far outside of the financial realm. To date, all of our properties are what I would call a vacation rental. And so people are going there with family members, be it, just their spouse or a larger family in our larger properties. And they are creating memories together. And for me personally, one of my favorite memories about my childhood were our vacations. And so having the ability to actually be a small slice of someone's lifelong memory, it literally gives me goosebumps talking about it. It is.
I have them right?
So incredibly rewarding. And one of my favorite things to do is to go into my properties and open up the guest book, because you actually get to experience, through their words, how much their stay has meant to them. So that is one of a few things that I especially love about short-term rentals. The other thing, which I know you both can attest to as well, there is the most amazing community in this industry. And being a part of an industry that, as fellow investors and co-hosts and educators and podcasters, we can lock arms and help one another out. And it's all about collaboration. I love that. There's a saying, and I am probably going to butcher the saying, but so many people, maybe in other industries or in other aspects of life, try to build themselves up by putting other people down. And one of, again, my favorite things about this industry is you let your light shine from within and help other people, and you're helping everyone. It's a win-win collaboration. So I love that as well. And
That's
then
amazing.
I'm a huge fan of course, my own sisterhood, female community. And it's certainly something that has become an incredibly important part of my life and something I could have never imagined to begin with. So
that is awesome. That is fantastic. I think a lot of that resonates with Kim and I too. Especially, our favorite thing. I mean, we buy houses in areas that we enjoy vacationing in, and we own 2 of our own, and then we have several that we co-host, but it is pure magic when we get to go to our own homes, when we get to be a guest in our own home, which we actually enjoy. Some people that's weird, but for us, we've done it. Yeah, that's our thing. And just having things there that we don't have at home that the kids can enjoy, whether it's the beach at the end of the street or the hot tub and skiing up in Maine, whatever it is. Like our kids, they're very young, but they get super excited about these neat things that they don't realize are probably going to be theirs one day.
Well, and I love that you're saying that, because right now, obviously your kids are enjoying those things, but I will tell you that my children are older, right? And so what's really rewarding for me along those same lines is my youngest came into my office recently and said, "Hey, Mom, how much money do I need to buy a house?" And he's not looking to buy a house to live in. He's looking to buy a house to start his real estate investing portfolio. So just kind of by osmosis, your kiddos, as they grow up, they're going to enjoy these fabulous things about your short-term rentals, but they're also going to understand the value of hard work, because it's not like we sit around and eat bonbons all day long.
Right.
And secondly, they're also going to see the benefits of having time and financial freedom, and they're going to want that, chances are. So super cool.
So it's funny you say that, because we have a 3.5-year-old and a 15-month-old, and the 3.5-year-old, he's too young to understand that right now. It's funny. He will help us do odds and end jobs around the house. Dave had to replace, I think, the blinds or something, and he loves grabbing his little tools and fixing it with him. But he definitely has this sense of ownership of both houses. We have a beach house and a mountain house, and we named the mountain house Logan's Lodge, but now he calls the beach house Logie's Beach House. So poor daughters doesn't have any houses right now at the moment. So it's very funny where he has this ownership. And he's like, last week Dave was there at our beach house doing, meeting clients and doing some other stuff down there. And he said, "I want to go to Logie's Beach House. Let's go right now." So it's very cool. He has these connections to those places. And my parents used to rent in right on Bay Ave, the seawall, right in Marshfield, Massachusetts. And even now, I was probably 3 years old or, even younger when we started renting there. And I still feel like that's our vacation home 30 something years later. So you're so right that people have that memory, and it becomes a slice of their long-term memory that they're never going to forget.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it just goes to show you that you're going to need to buy another property soon so you can name it after your other child.
Oh, we know that.
Kim's been eyeing the Carolinas, the beach side of Carolinas. It's been a common discussion the last few nights, which I love. And, some of our listeners have heard this story, but I've always been the risk taker in our relationship. Usually it's for physical activities, whatever it might be. But, buying our first investment property, that was all Kim. And I was like, I did not say no. I was jumping on her train. I was like, that is a great idea, but it is awesome. One of the things I'd love to do is sort of rewind back to 2020. And let me just, before I kind of ask some questions, when you shared your story on the STR Secrets podcast, which for anyone listening now, if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it because it's a fantastic episode. And I was really inspired by how you didn't just buy a short-term rental and run it like a mom and pop place trying to cover expenses. You did it like a business. You built a business. And I'd love to go take it, I guess, maybe a little bit before September of 2020 and learn a little bit about what your sort of corporate background was and what sort of skills you pulled from that to be able to apply to this. And what kind of things were you working on early in the morning? I think that's kind of inspiring. And I'd just love to open that up a little bit, share that.
Yeah, sure. So my corporate background has always been in the marketing and advertising industry. And for many years when my kids were young, I actually owned my own business. And when they got a little older, I rejoined the corporate world and worked for a very large media company in their digital marketing space. And then I moved over to a global consulting firm, and I led our sales and business development team, as well as account service team. And in that particular organization, I was fortunate enough to also serve on the leadership team. So I had a lot of leadership training that was delivered to me by way of my W-2. And I feel like that has very candidly served me very well because I've been able to glean from those experiences in the corporate world and really seen the way things happen when things go right and when things go wrong, and been able to, as proactively as I can, put things in place so that things are going right more than the opposite. So, but yeah, I feel like having the ability to, I did a lot of extensive training on the EOS system, which is by Gino Wickman. You might have heard the book Traction.
Yeah.
And so I went through a lot of training for that in my corporate role, in my latest W-2 that I retired from. And again, I feel like everything, I'm a huge believer that everything happens for a reason, that sometimes you never know where your path is going to end up. And at the time, I thought it was fabulous training. But now, having my own business in the short-term rental space, I really, really focus on a lot of those core principles and implementing those into my own business.
That is awesome. And that is why I also love having Kim in this business with me, because I have strengths and I have weaknesses, and some of those things aren't my strengths.
No, but it's good. I mean, you both are balancing a business together. And I'm a huge believer, you absolutely need to surround yourself with people who balance you out. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. There is nothing wrong with it. I think a lot of people also feel bad about their weaknesses, or they beat themselves up about their weaknesses. Guess what? We all have them.
Right.
The key is exploiting your strengths, right? And hiding your weaknesses. But we don't hide our weaknesses under a rug. We hide them by surrounding ourselves with people who have those weaknesses as strengths. right? So you're
Right.
able to constantly upskill through your team members.
Right.
Yeah. Something
Right.
I think about with identifying those strengths and weaknesses, something I've seen with successful people is kind of twofold. One is self-awareness, and the other is seeking out mentorship so you can find those blind spots or understand a better way to do it, and then figure out those gaps. Like Dave and I joined the mastermind. I think you've been in for a while now, a couple of weeks ago, and we're seeing where our strengths are, and then where we could be better. And so I think that golden combination of self-awareness and then seeking out mentorship, resources, education, books to help shed light on those weaknesses so you can fill them, either augment yourself or find the right people to partner and team with so that you become more balanced as a whole.
Absolutely. I think the other thing too, which is really important, not only balancing yourself out, and when you find those people who have the strengths where you might have a weakness, I also think it's important to understand their personalities, because on paper, someone could be a really good fit. Now, you two don't have this because you're married, right? And hopefully on paper, you're a good fit as well. But if you are going to the outside to, bring in team members to augment where you might need a little support from a strengths or weaknesses perspective, understanding how their mind works, not only understanding yourself, understanding them. So like doing a DISC profile or a Myers-Briggs test, or I know there are all different methodologies for folks understanding their personalities, but I also love that because it's not everyone ticks the same way, right? So I think that's also really important to understand about people so that you can be the best communicator to them. You can be the best leader for them. And not everyone is built the same way.
100% right. Sorry, Kim.
Stacey, what is oh no, that's all right. What does your team look like right now?
Sure. So I have on my team inside of our real estate investing business or hosting business, however you want to term it. I have someone who is really a sales and marketing operations specialist. And she was my right-hand person from the get-go. She initially managed all guest communications for me as well. As we've grown our portfolio, I've built out a 24/7 concierge team. So I have 3 virtual assistants that are all former Airbnb employees, and they are running point on all the day-to-day guest communications, inquiries, coordinating with maintenance folks. And then that operations, sales, and marketing lead really serves as a leader for that team. So it's wonderful because I have fabulous people in place. I personally do not have to spend a ton of time in my own business, which frees me up to do other things as well. I also have a quality control team that focuses their boots on the ground. And they focus obviously on ensuring that our turnover teams, our cleaners, are doing the best job possible, and obviously communicating feedback to them if there are things that need to take place in order to have a 5-star experience from a quality control side. And then I also have folks that serve in a virtual capacity that do social media marketing for our property portfolio. And again, I feel like everyone has very defined roles and responsibilities, but they also integrate really well together as a team. And then last but not least, I think it's really important to just understand, again, although my husband doesn't work in our business day to day, he is still very actively engaged on the back end at dinner time and in the evenings and in the weekends. And his role is in the corporate world, he leads human resources. So he is very much involved in, helping to build that team, I would say, in a more passive role, if that makes sense.
Right. Absolutely. It's funny, as you were listing out what each of those sort of groupings of folks do, I saw a lot of my weaknesses listed out. And, it's funny, before Kim was as involved as she is now, strengths of mine is I'm really good at people relationships, which translates well into sales, right? Like quick at building trust and keeping trust with folks is really what it is. But I leave a trail of dust behind me, receipts everywhere, not always, like just holy moly.
You and I could go to dinner together and have lots to chat about on that. No.
Yeah. And it's funny. And so, with Kim on sabbatical for a few weeks, she kind of lifted up the hood of the car. And I don't think she was too pleased with how I've been treating the car. Yeah, maybe it got from state to state pretty quick, but let's just say it's been a while since it's had an oil change. So there's been kind of a lot in there, but it is nice that Kim helps hold me accountable within our business. And Kim has also, in her time off from work, entering new work, right? She has done a really good job to leverage our hands. So we have a full-time virtual assistant that helps us out, who's fantastic. But again, I didn't necessarily set that individual up for success. So Kim has helped support her to be a little bit more successful, so I can almost focus on what I'm good at for a few weeks and really run with it. And it's been really neat. But I really admire how, you started, with one, and you kind of strategically put people in the right places. And I bet you have a much better peace of mind in the evenings, and probably your husband too, knowing these people are in place.
Totally. Absolutely. It's funny. I have a WhatsApp channel for all of our team members, and, I can pop in and see conversations going on with my team at any given time. And there is complete trust that I know if someone needs me, if I need to weigh in, they're going to reach out to me. But I have complete trust in my team to be able to operate the day to day. And there is beauty in that I don't have the internal heartburn or headache happening and praying that they're going to get stuff right. I know they're going to get stuff right. And guess what? Mistakes will happen. Of course, that happens. But what we'll do when a mistake happens is we'll create a process to deal with the overflow from that mistake and shore it up so that it doesn't happen in the future. Right. I think that's what good leadership is it is obviously being a problem solver, but then what can we proactively put in place so that problem doesn't occur moving down the line?
Exactly. And that's some of the stuff Dave and I are learning, which we know, and it's just slowing down enough to anticipate it or finally stumble. We had an issue with our Schlage code automatically pushing, for example, very basic stuff. And we said, oh, shoot, we should have had this already buttoned up with an SOP and this, now we'll do that this week and move on from there.
Yeah. The other thing I do want to also point out is that bookkeeping piece, Dave, that you mentioned, because the receipts overflowing, listen, again, I totally get you. I am really good at stuffing my purse full of receipts and thinking, oh, I will totally organize that later on. I actually paid my son to scan and organize my receipts for me. So although he is older and I can't get a tax benefit for paying my children, you can actually pay your children from a tax strategy standpoint. And I am no tax expert, but that could be a great thing to pay your child who's under the age of 18 to do. And again, have a tax benefit for it, if that resonates with anyone. But again, a lot of people, I feel like, beat themselves up about the fact that they're not so great with their receipts. And I have a bookkeeper who helps me obviously keep all of my books straight. And sometimes they're like wanting to wring my neck saying, Stacey, we're still waiting on X, Y, and Z from you. And so I think being comfortable in your own skin is really important. I know that that isn't something that I love. And that is something that I absolutely need I need professional help.
Right.
But I'm not afraid to admit that, right? A lot of people, I think, kind of try to tuck it under the rug and just hope that it's going to get better. And sure, they're going to learn it down the line and it'll all be okay. No, be all right with where you are today. If you want to learn bookkeeping best practices and be a professional bookkeeper in the future, awesome, great. But in the meantime, get the help you need.
One of the things I love about now being a business owner, we have several different disciplines, businesses within real estate. But when I walked away from the corporate world, I was a director at a healthcare consulting firm. And I really enjoyed the role. I liked the people I worked with. I had so much momentum in real estate that it was sort of left the keys on the table and walked out, with appropriate notice. It wasn't, there was no bad terms left. However, one thing that you said that just really made me think is when I was in that W-2 role, it was not uncommon for me to have to pick up, duties as needed, as described, whether it was putting my sales hat on or playing an HR role that day or training and teaching a new hire, doing a lot of things that I think my performance was based on how many things can I take on that I'm not good at and do better at. And what I'm now just reflecting on is that as a business owner, we get to decide at some point what we want to grow in, what we want to delegate out. It's totally up to us. And there's resources outside of that. And the other thing that I'll say, especially in this industry, is it's not like tech where there's this drive to be ultra lean and move fast and break things. In real estate, it's a little bit calmer. You can a lot of times benefit by having appropriate structure underneath you, and it can really cover your backside so you can continue to grow the company. So some of the differences between a W-2 and just being an owner, in my opinion.
There's a definite pivot shift. There's a mindset shift when you are working a W-2 versus owning your own business. And candidly, Dave, I don't know if you experience this, when you shift from employee to entrepreneur and you step away from that W-2, there is a sense of pressure that wasn't there before.
Yes.
And so understanding again how to deal with that and not to let that cripple you is a thing. It's a big thing. And so I think again, awareness is key. Not beating yourself up about it is key. But also, as we go back and talk about community, that's why this community in this industry is so amazing. Because guess what?
Right.
There are so many other people in that exact same position, and we can all help one another.
And this is a really quick plug, but that's why Kim and I really enjoy these different real estate conferences. I know you hosted one last week that Kim talked about in the intro. Kim and I really enjoy going to the STR Wealth conferences. If you don't have the time to spend necessarily in a mastermind or coaching program, taking a little vacation and putting yourself in a room with 50 to 1,000 other people that are going through the same things, it's a really great way to level up and just get some time out of the house to try something new.
Absolutely. And it's tax deductible, right?
It is.
Hello. I mean, that's
right.
the best part. You get to travel, you get to grow your network. And, you've heard the saying, your network is your net worth. I'm a huge believer in that. And at the same time, you're able to get some time maybe out of the house. Maybe away from the kiddos.
Yeah.
And again, have a good tax write-off at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that we went to lunch with someone we met at the conference in Miami in September last week, and they were saying that they just feel that this community is their people. And I said to Dave, that's how I felt after leaving the conference in Miami, because we tried to go to local meetups for multifamily investors or RIAs, and I just never felt that those were my people. And it might have been the groups I was going to, but then when we went there and immersed ourselves with these short-term rental owners who were further ahead than us, and some people were there who've never bought one and were just thinking about buying one, which was very cool. And I think such a smart idea to do that. I said to Dave after last week's lunch, and just over the last several months with all the people we've met and the connections we've continued to keep up with, these feel like my people. They feel like they're cut from the same cloth, and that's been very amazing to find, because it's taken us a couple of years. I think I remember going to a Boston RIA event in January of 2020 before COVID shut everything down, and having this, I'm feeling like I'm trying to put myself out there, but I'm not quite hitting the mark, and don't feel like this is the right group and the right investment I'm looking for. So it's been very cool to discover that and get to meet people like you along the way.
Oh, well, I do honestly believe that this industry is vastly different than any other industry I've been a part of. And I think, again, that community element is prevalent in, across different Facebook groups, different mastermind groups and coaching programs. And, I think that's the beauty of this, is that we all may intersect in different ways or have commonalities or differences in what communities we're a part of. But at the same time, everyone kind of has this underlying foundation of, hey, we're here to help. That's probably what makes us good short-term rental hosts to begin with, because we love to help.
Exactly right. So I want to rewind just a little bit again. So you launched in this endeavor in September of 2020. And over a few years, all right, so almost 2 years, you really put things in place that allowed you to walk away from your job. What was life like? How are you preparing to do that? How are you confident in making that decision? And how's it been going since then?
Well, yeah. So prior to walking away from the corporate world, I had to figure out what I was going to put in place, which allowed me to do that exit. Right. And so you mentioned 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. I am a morning person. And so for me, what I focused on is I would get up very early in the morning. I would work on building out the SOPs, building out the infrastructure. How can I build a machine that allows me to work very little? Because guess what? I had to.
Right.
In this space, because I was working a W-2. So how can I build a machine that operates on its own, mainly through an outsourced model, and let me oversee the machine? And yeah, I'll tweak it. And yeah, I'll put oil in it. And yeah, I'll gas it up. That's what I did from 4 to 7 a.m. Right. I continued to build the machine and also optimize it and improve it as we go. But then that way, during my quote regular work hours, that machine just operated with my team. Right. And again, they would bring me in when they needed a question answered, or I needed to provide perspective on a certain situation that happened with a guest, let's say. But that's really where I focused my energy. And because I was able to do that, again, Kim mentioned early on my accelerator program, I've made that machine, blueprint, if you will, available to my students so that they don't have to go and reinvent that machine. They can create that machine with the blueprint that's already out there. But secondarily, now that I have stepped away from the corporate world, it allows me, more time freedom, for sure. Before stepping away, I did want to have a couple of things in place. I wanted to have our annual profits exceeding my W-2, right? So that was a KPI that I wanted to have in place. I wanted to have a certain amount of cash in reserves to cover, obviously, my W-2 income. And I had a healthy income. So that was another metric that I wanted to see in place. But then also, as you might imagine, when you walk away from the W-2, you go into this, world full time. I kind of feel like the world is my oyster, which is fun and exciting. But then again, we have to focus our energy in, again, the highest and best use of our time. So I consider the highest and best use of my time is obviously helping my coaching students, helping my communities, and helping provide resources and remove roadblocks for my own team members as we continue to grow our co-hosting and property management business, as well as growing our own personally owned profile of properties as well.
Right. That's really cool how you laid that all out. It was really interesting. It was really interesting to hear what, those 20 months sort of looked like for you. And I think what's really neat is you stayed super focused on that. And that focus I'm not getting the sense that focus wavered once you left. It probably intensified. And at the same time, you did get a lot of time back. And I will say, what was interesting for me when I left my W-2 is that I didn't really give myself any time back. And it's only been recently that I've sort of exploded out my weekly schedule and rebuilt it in a way that is a little bit more comfortable and a little bit less dreadful. Because even though I love real estate, I don't love doing it from 5 a.m. till 10 at night. And there's been times that I've allowed that to happen because I haven't focused on the highest and best use of my time. Sometimes I would focus on the things I really enjoyed doing, which is a lot of networking and meeting with other real estate professionals, but there wasn't really an agenda, or it wasn't necessarily helping push our business forward. I was just hanging out. I was just,
And I think, again, to the concept of employee mindset versus entrepreneurial mindset. As an employee, you can go to a networking event and hang out, and it's great, right? Because you're building and developing relationships, and that is huge in any industry. But I also think with an entrepreneurial approach to that same thing, it's, hey, I am strategically building relationships, and how can I continue to serve those relationships? How can I continue to support the people that I've just met? And I feel like when you lead with value and you lead with, hey, how can I help you? For me, at least, it pays back in dividends because it's helped me grow my business. But at the same time, I freaking love what I do. It feels good to do what we do. So that's really rewarding, shall we say.
Yeah, it's something I love about your story too, Stacey, is I think that there's evidence of boundaries. That's another reason we were joking that Dave he realized some of his weaknesses or things operationally that weren't done to par. And my being on sabbatical, I've been able to try to help, but I give Dave so much credit because he started our co-hosting business mostly on his shoulders. And then I was able to start ramping up in the last couple months to help before sabbatical, and then especially on sabbatical. But I hear evidence of boundaries. You said you had a leadership position, so you could not be jumping in throughout the whole day, being peppered with questions and stuff. And that's what Dave was respecting. I said, I'm at my job from this time to this time. I can do it super early in the morning. I can hop on a call at lunch, or we can talk about it at night. And so I think boundaries and ideal structure, even with Dave saying I'm doing real estate from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., there's been talks of, hey, what are boundaries we can put around this? If you're getting casual texts around dinner time and bath time, those can wait. And this one's a more urgent one. Let's pick that one up. And I think that that's been helpful for us. I think I've been boundaries are more innate to me, or I've been very protective of them. And Dave realized that he has had a little bit more loose with boundaries, and now he's trying to restructure his ideal day. And I hear bits and pieces of those in your stories, which has been very cool to hear.
Totally. I think for me, I am all about time blocking. So, structuring your time when you are working in or on your business. How can I, again, get the most value out of this time? So time blocking is a really, I think, powerful strategy to build those boundaries. So you say, okay, I'm going to dedicate this hour, or whatever the case might be, this 15 minutes, this 90 minutes to do this set of tasks, or focus on this specific aspect of my business. And then I'm done, right? Then I'm going to walk away. I also think giving yourself permission to recharge and to step away. It's really difficult, I believe, as a couple who is passionate about what you do. It's fun. I mean, my husband and I look at real estate on the weekends, right? Because we enjoy it. But it can be really difficult to then step away. But I do think it's important to structure time where you aren't focusing on or in your business. You have personal time that is scheduled out for you, because that's when your battery recharges. It's how you keep your energy up, instead of kind of dealing with burnout. It's really easy to get burned out if you're day in, day out, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. There will come a time where you're like, whoa, I'm done.
And it's, to me, it's definitely happened a couple times. Luckily, that feeling doesn't usually last more than half a day. And I'm like excited and energized after I take that day or two off. But you bring up some really important points, and I think you're probably similar. Kim and I are people that have a knack at being good at working. We just are, right? And it's easy to just end up leaning into something you're passionate about. But when it totally overruns your day, I do probably get half a dozen texts a day from friends. How about this house? How about this? People that are starting to get into investing or short-term rentals. And while I truly enjoy those discussions, now, luckily, all of them will start with, this isn't important. You can get back to me in a week or whatever.
Well, right. Or even if you just save those texts and scheduled every Thursday at 4 p.m., I'm going to reply to these friends who reached out. And, so there's nothing wrong with, helping support your friends who are excited about this business.
Right.
It's certainly an exciting one to be in, but I think protecting your time is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
And Dave's you've definitely been more focused on what is draining your energy versus what is fueling your energy, both in people, conversations, activities. And I think being in tune with that is so critical in life and just in this business in general.
Totally. When I was in the corporate world, it's funny, I felt the feeling of when my day needed to end, but I didn't end it. Before ever real estate investing or anything like that, I would always get up and work early in the morning. Right. And with a very busy W-2 job, I would get up and work before I drove into the office. I'd work a full day. I would drive home. I'd be on calls during the drive home, and then I'd get home and I'd work more. And I had this feeling of being exhausted and drained, but at the time I wasn't in tune with it. Okay. Right. So I didn't really do anything about it. Now, after understanding how to identify, as you just mentioned, Kim, what drains me versus what gives me energy, I'm much more in tune with when I'm done for the day, number one. And number two, what to outsource, what to give to other people, because I know that if I'm putting it off, Mama is not good at it.
There's a reason.
Give it away.
The classic who, not how. If you're procrastinating it, you're not the right person to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we start to kind of come to the end of our discussion here, I'd love to hear, what are Stacey's goals for 2023 and maybe the next couple of years? You can go as far out as you want or
Oh
not.
gosh. Well, for us, we will, and again, I say us, my husband and I, we will continue to expand our own portfolio of properties that we own. So we, in the fall of 2022, purchased a 10-acre estate here in Ohio, and we are building 2 homes on that property
Awesome.
this year. So that is certainly something that's exciting. We will continue to grow out our co-hosting or property management business as in addition to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, but also expanding in Hocking Hills, Ohio, which is, again, the market that we have recently delved into. And of course, we have different, metrics as far as how large we want to grow with each of those markets. But then also for me, it's, continuing to lean in and supporting other people in this space. It is something that I absolutely love doing, helping other people understand the power of this asset class from an investment standpoint and how to grow their wealth through short-term rentals, but also leaning in and supporting them in other ways and helping them understand their own potential. I think that's something that I personally love doing, is helping other people understand what's already inside of them and helping to unleash that, shall we say. So I will continue to educate others.
That's amazing.
The education and community piece has been incredible. We didn't get to dive into the virtual summit last week, but I'm excited to see, just to be able to tap into the networks and communities you've already created. And I don't have to spill the beans if you're doing another summit, but I'll be there if you do another one.
Oh. Well, the virtual summit is an annual event. So definitely put the end of January on your calendar for 2024. But yes, there are lots of fun things in the works still for 2023 as far as virtual educational events as well as in-person events. So stay tuned.
Love it. And what we'll do is we'll gather links or your Instagram or Facebook group and all that, and we'll share it in the show notes for folks and on our YouTube channel. Well, as a final parting of ways on the show, anything you'd like to leave the listeners with? We didn't really prep you for that question, but any advice you'd give to somebody thinking about jumping in or looking to start really growing their short-term rental business?
Yeah, I think if you're just starting out, it's really important to outline what you want from a short-term rental. I think a lot of people, again, they get into it because they hear about it from a friend and it seems exciting. It seems fun. And it is so fun. But at the same time, I think making sure that it aligns with what you want 5 years, 3 years down the road, like how can we utilize this as a catalyst for your future success, right? So writing down and understanding really what your vision is for your life and how this short-term rental individual property or portfolio of properties or co-hosting business, whatever it is that you're doing, fits and integrates into that, I think is really important. And I think number 2, the other thing that I really would love for people to understand is there are many different facets to this business. And that's one of the things that makes it super exciting. And there are lots of skills that are incorporated with being a great real estate investor, being a great host, being a great marketer of your properties, and being a great entrepreneur, which I call the fundamentals of having a short-term rental business. But the cool thing is you don't personally have to be the expert in all of those different pillars, right? So surround yourself with people like, obviously Kim and Dave and others that, help kind of fill those voids and really understand where you shine and lean into that. Shine brighter in those areas. And then again, find the right people to support you along the way.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Stacey. This was awesome. And, there were several areas or times when you were speaking that I kept getting chills, but it was awesome. This was really, really fantastic. For all of our listeners, again, we'll put in the show notes how you can get a hold of Stacey, how you can check out some of the different groups that she leads. We'll have a link to her podcast and a whole bunch more. So thank you so much, Stacey. This was really, really fantastic.
Hey, the pleasure is mine. Thank you so much for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by the 5-Star Co-Host, an Airbnb management and consulting company that helps property owners turn their homes into passive income streams through short-term rentals. Do you want to turn your vacation house into a passive income stream? Then look no further. The 5-Star Co-Host manages properties in several different markets and have serviced thousands of guests. The 5-Star Co-Host is at the vanguard of the short-term rental industry by leveraging technology and systems to maximize the guest experience while achieving high revenue and peace of mind for the owner. Get a free home analysis by visiting our website, www.5strcohost.com. That's the number 5, strcohost.com, or send us an email at support@5strcohost.com. Again, that's support@the number 5, strcohost.com.